Okay, gonna tie a little fly that I love the redfish with. This is just a little deer hair swimming bait fish, and it's a tiny little head on a big hook. And I like this because it looks like a little shrimp, and it's not very buoyant. It sinks down a little bit, so it's easier for the redfish to get it in its mouth. It's tied on a size 1/0 hook, SC15, real sharp hooks, size 1/0, because I didn't say that. First thing we do is going to start with a little size 3/0 tying thread. Build up a little foundation. And put some Krystal flash in here. A little copper Krystal flash will work good. Don't want to put too much. No need to overdo it. And it doesn't need to be too long. Let it come out about an inch, inch and a quarter, something like that. And then for a really simple tail, just take a little bit of zonker strip and tie that in right on top of that. Then I'm going to trim it down. I want this tail to be fairly short because I don't want it wrapping around the hook when I'm casting. If it's a long piece, it can wrap around like that and get caught up and cause your fly to foul. Short piece like that will work fine. Finish up the foundation, and I'm going to tie this off just a couple knots because I'm going to put some Kevlar on top of that. This is what I use to spin the deer hair with. Some folks use maybe a 3/0 or a little bit stronger, but Kevlar is my favorite. It's about the strongest I've found. Get a little patch of natural deer hair, belly strip. And you want to get all the little furry stuff out of it. First bunch I put in there, I'm going to stack the tips. So just tap that down. And it lines those tips up nice and even. I'm going to cut some of this down here. Do it over my basket there. Alright, put it at an angle, make one loose wrap, and then make a second wrap and tighten down and spin it. That's why it's called spinning deer hair. And just make a few more wraps around. If you want to make it a little bit thicker, just cut you one more smaller clump. Not quite as big. The first one was a little bit bigger than a pencil. This one's about the size of a pencil. I'm going to stack the tips in this one. Nice even tips, and I'll trim this down some. I'll line it up where I want it with the tips. Back one wrap off and put it right on top. Put my fingernail and push down. And make 2 or 3 wraps, and that'll secure it pretty good. And then work my thread to the front of this clump of deer hair. I'm going to push it back a little bit, pack that in there nice and tight. This is what helps tighten it up. And then I'm going to tie a knot right in front of it, just in case you break your thread. You don't want to have to start all the way over. Don't get that deer hair caught down in there though. Just did 3 wraps on the quick whip finish there. Now the rest of the clumps, you don't need to stack the deer hair tips. Just get it nice and cleaned up. Put it at about a 45-degree angle. Make 2 wraps. Loose one, and then the second one tighten it and spin it just like the first one. Couple more wraps, and then push it. Notice I've got my left hand holding the back so I don't push this all the way down to the bend of the hook, or so I don't slip and stick that hook in my fingertip. A little knot in there, a little half hitch ought to be fine. Take another little clump, Just keep working forward, one clump at a time. Spin it. That's a little clump, so I know I'm going to have to put at least one more in front of it. That's the last batch of that deer hair, so I'm going to start a new batch over here. I don't have a whole lot of hook shank left, so I don't want to start with a big giant clump. But I've got room for a little bit more. Two wraps, spin it around. You can spin that with your fingers too to make it balanced out, so it's just as thick on the top and the bottom, or left and right. Just spin it to where it evens out. And I'm going to put a whip in front of it. So now you just got a big hairball, and we're going to start shaving that down. I'm going to get a double-sided razor blade, and I'm going to break this in half. Just bend it. Be careful with it, obviously. Just use one side. First step is you want to start getting some flat lines. So I'll turn it upside down. Start on the bottom. Just make a nice flat cut. Now remember, start light. Don't cut too deep because you can never add it. Then we'll get to the sides. Make a couple of cuts and then shave it and see what you've got. And go to this side. And then I'm going to go to the front and go back at an angle that way. From there I can start working down to the shape I want. And when I get to the right shape, I might round those corners a little bit to give it a little more natural looking body or head. I like to leave the first stack of hair that I put in there where you can see the tips. I like to leave those because it gives it a nice natural taper. Any of these that are not tapered, cut those off. Said I'm going to work this down to a really small head because I don't want it to be floating real high on top. I want it to sink down in the water column a little bit. I'll just keep working it a little bit at a time. You can see it's starting to get a little bit of a triangle shaped head. Kind of go in and trim some of these flat pieces out. It doesn't matter as far as the function goes, it's really more or less the appearance. And really the only thing left is to put some eyes on it. Bring the vise back in so I can hold it. Now I've got one of these little hot points, and I'll go in and just put a circle right where I want the eye. Burn that out a little bit, make a little groove. It gives it a nice little place to sit down in there. And take a drop of Zap-A-Gap. This is the gel. The regular super glue or Zap-A-Gap is too thin. You want to have the gel so it doesn't soak it up in the head. Cover that little groove area, carved out area, cover that really good. And just get your little eyeball. And these little prismatic eyes looks real good in the water. Put it on there. Take the back side of my dubbing tool and push it down there. You don't want to use your finger because your finger will overlap it and that glue will stick to it as soon as it touches. And then I'm going to take it and do the same thing on the other side. Try and make it where it's symmetrical. Drop a glue in there. Work it down in the fur and the deer hair a little bit to give it a good hard base. I'll put that in there. And then I'll just do a little touch up. Once you put those eyes in there, that really brings it to life. Then I'll just trim it a little bit to take some of the square corners or squareness away. And that basically will do it. It's a very simple deer hair swimming baitfish pattern. It's great for redfish in real shallow water, or bass, any kind of warm water fish, anything that eats minnows or shrimp. And like I said, the bigger hook keeps it down in the water. It doesn't float on top. It dives down a little bit better with that heavier hook and that really small deer hair. So the more deer hair you've got, the more buoyant it is, obviously. And that's why I like this little one like that.